As you can see, there's some going on with my hair right now. The reason is because I just washed it, but my wife is in the bathroom that has my comb, so you guys get to deal with my hair as it is. Let me tell you what we're going to be talking about real quick, actually. This is Eric Metaxas. If you don't know him, I just about guarantee that your grandfather probably does. He is as influential as Rush Limbaugh in a lot of ways. He runs a 2-hour radio show from, I think, the Empire State Building every day, or something to that effect. By the way, yes, I do intend to do this entire episode complete, flat-faced, and dead serious, with my hair looking like this, if you wondered. So, anyway, Eric Metaxas is extremely influential in the far-right movement. Even though you may not know him, he is extremely influential. He did an interview with Jordan Peterson. So I wanted to listen to this interview between these two nutter butters of epic proportions and see what they had to say to each other. Bound to be fascinating. As a matter of fact, I happen to know that Eric Metaxas here, he wrote a book called Letter to the American Church. And the premise of the book is basically, he talks about this pastor named Bonhoeffer in Nazi Germany, who was, I haven't looked into the guy, from my understanding, a good person, saw the bad coming from a mile away, and tried to get other pastors involved, tried to get them to recognize what was happening, and kind of, I don't know what you could, like, shake them and wake them up and say, look at what's happening right now. Like, we have Nazis that are beating our doors down, and before you know it, we're not going to be able to say what we want to say from the pulpits, and people are going to die and all that junk. Anyway, that was Bonhoeffer. Well, Eric Metaxas, nothing that he says is trustworthy. Nothing. Literally nothing. I have to look up every single, even trivial claim that he makes. He wrote a book about Bonhoeffer, completely untrustworthy book. And in his book, Letter to the American Church, he compares himself to Bonhoeffer and says that we are in Nazi Germany right now. And people on the left who are in favor of the trans community, or in favor of gay marriage, think that it should be available to everybody, they're the Nazis. You know, if you are pro-trans, you are a Nazi. And Eric Metaxas here, this poor victimized soul, is trying to shake people awake and say, look, there are Nazis at the door. You need to wake up. You need to see what's happening right now. That was the framing of the entire Letter to the American Church book. Now, I wrote a book recently about my experiences within Jehovah's Witnesses, and I have some questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, 100 questions. They're split into 2 separate books, although the 100 questions are contained within the pages of the book Understanding Jehovah's Witnesses, the bigger book. So the bigger book is about 300 pages or so. It's about this big. This is the book that I wrote. And the smaller book is the last chapter of the bigger book. It's about this big. It's just a 60-page thing. And it's 100 questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, and it talks about, basically questions that Jehovah's Witnesses are incapable of answering. So check that out if you're interested, owenmorgan.com/book or owenmorgan.com/eBay if you want to go to the eBay store instead. That's an option. But Eric Metaxas wrote this book, Letter to American Church, and I honestly think the next book I write is going to be Letter to the American Church, A Response. Because I read the whole thing. I read his entire book, and I took notes on it and everything, and it is psychotic. the whole thing is framed as though he is a victim of a Nazi movement right now in America. The Nazis are the trans people or their allies. It's insane. So I have my notes up here from the book. I'm going to hit a few of them as we go through this interview. But just be aware that this guy is about to frame anybody to the left of hunting the homeless for sport. He's going to frame them, that being us, I guess, as Nazis. Like I say, he has a 2-hour radio show every day. He has a guy named John Zimmerak on, or he has had him on a few times. Let me just give you a little introduction to him real quick if you're unfamiliar. While we listen to this stuff, we're going to play some Final Fantasy VII. I'm just kind of going through like leveling up materia and stuff like that. Shouldn't bother you too much if you've never seen it or played it. It'll just be in the background. But yeah, I'm just going around grinding basically right now. So, all right, listen to Zimmerak and what he has to say on Eric Metaxas's radio show.
When the Nazis attacked Jewish stores and got away with it, that told people persecution, real genocidal persecution, is down the road. Right now in America, our government and the leftist institutions that support it, from the Ivy League to large numbers of churches, to the mainstream of the Republican Party, which supports it by being afraid to fight it, it's reminding me of the buildup in the 1990s in Rwanda, the buildup towards genocide. The Hutus were the majority, but they weren't as wealthy or successful as the minority Tutsis.
God, even this dude's framing of the situation is just disgusting and embarrassing. I'm not even going to bother. I'm sure that I can trust you to just assume that everything that he says is just complete nonsense. But okay.
They resented them. They wanted their stuff. They wanted their power.
Yeah, that's why the genocide happened. They wanted their stuff. Yeah, okay. Whatever. I'm not here to argue that right now.
Their money. And they started demonizing the Tutsis, calling them cockroaches. I
think they're called Tutsi. Tutsi. Tutsi, not Tootsie. I think, isn't that a movie with Tom Hanks or something, Tootsie? Okay.
On radio shows, news hosts would refer to Tutsi cockroaches. The way I see people talking about white people, about Christians, about so-called Christian nationalists, they talk about us the same way.
Okay, John, I want to...
Yeah, totally. So, white people are persecuted is the bottom line. White people are being persecuted right now, right? Because of how they're demonizing them. Because of the names that they're being called. Right? Now listen to this video from John Zimmerak. This one is from 2022. These videos are not that old, people.
This is spiritual warfare, and we are now in the Normandy landing of spiritual warfare. The Democratic Party is possessed by preternatural evil. It is not a human institution anymore. It is an instrument of wicked spirits. This is demonic. Our enemies are demonic.
I mean, is anybody else seeing the problems with what he's saying here? Didn't he literally just say that the lead up to genocide is like calling people inhuman, cockroaches, vermin, evil, subhuman, basically? Didn't he just say that? And here we have, what is he saying? One more time. Let me just listen again. Hold on.
Instrument of wicked spirits. This is demonic. Our enemies are demonic.
I mean, the dude is so, like, there is no moral consistency to be found. Not just with John Zimmerak, but with Eric Metaxas, with with all of them, with everybody involved in the equation here. Okay?
Have faith.
I would give you an idea of what Letter to the American Church says, but I'm sure we'll get there. I'm sure as we listen to Eric Metaxas' interview with Jordan Peterson, I have no doubt that he's going to give me the opportunity to call it out here. So let's listen to this interview here.
And that thin theological view that some Christians have of what it is to have faith is profoundly wrong. It is unbiblical. And that's where we have drifted to this idea that people say, I can be against something in my mind, but I don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah, so that's the intro. I'm just jumping past the intro because I don't want to get a copyright hit or anything. Peterson seems like the kind of person that would hit somebody with copyright anyway, doesn't he? All right, we'll give it our best.
Hello, everyone watching and listening.
Hello.
Today I'm speaking with author, speaker, radio host, and incorrigible Eric Metaxas.
Incorrigible, okay.
We discuss his most recent book, A Letter to the American Church, which
Actually, it's just Letter to the American Church, and yeah, okay.
argues that it's a betrayal of faith to stay silent in the face of tyranny.
Okay, so the whole argument that he gave throughout the whole book, like the whole point of the book was to make the case that if you don't get politically involved, you are betraying your faith. But okay, let's keep listening.
Parallel the rise of the wannabe arbiters of speech across history against those making themselves manifest today. And
wannabe arbiters of speech. Who would be those wannabe arbiters of speech he's talking about, I wonder?
Detail the responsibility to act against falsehood that's an intrinsic part of the Abrahamic tradition, although increasingly non-existent in the American church today.
Dude, I'm sorry. Like, Jordan Peterson, the things that he says, the words make sense individually, but they don't really fit next to each other. Like, I don't understand what the hell he's trying to communicate half the time. I have a pretty good vocabulary, I think. I understand the words he's saying. It just feels like he's speaking nonsense. So let's step back a few seconds and really dissect what he's saying here. One more time.
And detail the responsibility to act against falsehood that's an intrinsic part of the Abrahamic tradition.
Okay, it's a fundamental piece of being Christian. He could have just said that. And so why did he say the Abrahamic tradition? Why didn't he just say Christian faith? It's a fundamental piece of the Christian faith to what?
Making themselves manifest today, and detail the responsibility to act against falsehood that's an intrinsic part of the
Okay, so it is in Christians' nature to speak up against falsehood, is what he's saying. That's what I'm picking up. Is that what he's putting down, or? I think so.
Abrahamic tradition, although increasingly non-existent in the American church today. So
Dude, why does he use those words? Honestly, it drives me insane. Use normal English. Use words that look, I know what each of those words mean. Why do you have to be intentionally confusing? That drives me crazy. There is a logical fallacy about this. What is it called? Logical fallacy. What's the fallacy for deliberate use of big words to confuse the audience? There we go. Be careful reading into someone else's intent. Argument by gibberish, is that what it is? When incomprehensible jargon or plain incoherent gibberish is used to give the appearance of a strong argument in place of evidence of valid reasons to accept the argument. There you go. That's it. Argument by gibberish. I'll take that one. That seems like Jordan Peterson's whole personality summed up, right? Okay.
Although increasingly non-existent in the American church today. So you recently wrote Letter to the American Church. I released a podcast a while back, or I guess it was just a monologue, which was Message to Christians. And so obviously, to some degree, we're thinking along parallel lines. Why did you think it was?
Wow, we wrote something that was about a similar subject, so obviously we're the same. Okay.
Which was Message to Christians. And so obviously, to some degree, we're thinking along parallel lines. Why did you think it was necessary to write a letter to the American church? What did you mean by the American church? And tell us about the letter and what the consequences of writing that was. That was
Okay, what he meant when he said the American church was evangelical extremists. He didn't mean the American church. He meant extremists very specifically. And his point was to try to convince them that they live in Nazi Germany and trans people are the Nazis that are coming to get them. Seriously.
2022 that was released, right?
Yes. I'm large. I contain multitudes. You know who said that? I believe it was Chris Christie. Just kidding.
Oh, hilarious. Wow.
I'm very eclectic. I'm very eclectic. And I have to tell you that some people know me principally as a writer because I've written, 14 plus books, many children's books. I do, of course, radio show, TV show, and so on and so forth. But almost everything that I do for everyone. In other words, I'm trying to reach a broad audience, not just I want to sell more books, but because I feel God created me to speak to a popular...
Okay, so what he's saying is I want power. I'm doing this because I want power and influence. Not because I want money, but because I want power and influence. Got it. Go on.
Audience to a wide audience. This most recent book, which is my shortest book, Letter to the American Church, is the first time I have ever written something specifically only for those who claim to be Christians. I thought to myself, well, I shouldn't say I thought to myself. I had a number of thoughts rambling around in my head that became increasingly highlighted in a way that I couldn't. I don't know how some people will take this, but I've never felt God called me to write something the way he did this book. In retrospect, all of my books, Bonhoeffer and so on and so forth, it's exceedingly clear to me that God's hand was in my writing them, but never.
Okay. So he's saying that God pushed him to write these books. I mean, that's absurd on its face, but aside from that, he's saying God uniquely and very specifically called him to write this book in a special way more than the others. Well, did he call you to write the books or not, Eric? Jesus, dude.
Never have I felt a burning passion that I knew was God calling me.
That might be gonorrhea. By the way, I feel a burning passion to write about Eric Metaxas' book in the same. Is that God telling me to debunk your nonsense? By the by, every single book that I write, I intend to write it for, well, as an audience, I intend to write it with an audience in mind that can be Christian or non-Christian, Jehovah's Witness, non-Jehovah's Witness, ex-Jehovah's Witness, anybody. I want anybody to access this, and it's not going to be, specifically intended for this group or that group, unless I write something specifically for atheism, which I'm likely not going to do. All of my books will be intended for, broad audiences. Anyway, okay, so we were at this guy thought he might have gonorrhea, right?
To write this specific book. So it's a strange and unique thing in my experience. There's if you think of the title Letter to the American Church, it would be natural to think, what kind of hubris are we talking about here that somebody would dare to write Letter to the American Church as though he's some modern day Paul or something like that. But on the contrary, because I felt it was God wanting to say this.
So he is saying that he's like a modern day Paul. He says, what kind of hubris is this? I know people would view it that way. What kind of hubris? Well, God told me to. So that kind of hubris. That's the kind of hubris that we're dealing with here. Great. Okay, go on. He does view himself as the new Paul, I suppose.
I had more humility than ever in writing it, thinking that
I was the most humble. I was more humble than anybody on planet Earth, okay? Nobody was as humble as me.
I had more humility than ever in writing it, thinking that I cannot get this wrong. I have to really be sure to take myself out of the way as much as possible to let God say what he wants to say. And I don't mean this in any mystical sense, but I was very sober-minded to write something with a title Letter to the American Church. And
what is he even saying? I don't know what you're trying to communicate right now. Are you saying that you are humble? Because the things that you're saying are not indicative of humility. It makes it seem like you're trying to put yourself in the position of a new Paul, like the next Paul or whatever. This is crazy. By the way, once again, thank you so much, Audrey. I appreciate that. That is awesome. Another sale for the book. I really hope you guys like the book. I'm super excited to finally release it. It's not far away now. Not far off. Anyway.
The reason I wrote it in a nutshell is that in 2010, I came out with my longest book, a biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German pastor who was involved in the plot to kill Hitler.
Oh my God. Okay. I don't know if anything that this guy says is true, like literally nothing. Was he involved in that plot? All I really know about the guy is that he was a pastor that opposed Hitler. That's about it. And I get the distinct impression that like everything else that this guy says is a lie.
I knew when I was writing that book that it sort of I could smell what was happening as I was writing that book. I could smell that in our future in the West, not just in America, but in America specifically. And with the events of the last few years, let's say the last 3 years, it was impossible for me to avoid the thought that just as the silence of the church in Germany opened the door to hell on earth, which we now know because we know what happened. And of course, I documented in my Bonhoeffer book and in this new book, Letter to the American.
Okay, yes, you wrote a book. Fantastic. So he's saying just like the church revealed that, hell on earth was opened in Germany in World War II back then. Today, we have evidence, I guess, in his mind, that hell on earth is opening right now because trans people exist.
American Church. But the thesis of this book, Letter to the American Church, is that precisely as the German church was silent and precisely as that opened the door to hell, to every kind of evil, it is the silence of the church in America now, this minute, that is similarly opening the door to hellish things on a number of fronts.
Okay, you know what? He says, it's opening the door to hellish things on a number of fronts. Well, let's just refer to my notes in his book and see which things he believes are an opening to hellish things on earth, the likes of which are equivalent to Nazi Germany. By the way, Jared, thank you so much for the book purchase. I really appreciate that. That is awesome. So this guy is saying in World War II, Hitler, literally, he he created camps of people where he would have them work. He'd have them press bullets and, design like tanks and things like that, do all the manual labor. And then one day he declared the Jew hunt. That's what it was called, the Jew hunt. If you find a Jew, pull the trigger. There was a set of partners who believed in the cause. They believed in it. They didn't like Jews either. They thought they were evil and they were doing all this other nonsense. But human beings aren't supposed to kill other human beings. It's just like, it's not in our nature. And it was hard for these people to do it. They had to find some ass-backwards justifications. So one of the two partners would kill the parents when they saw a family. They'd kill the father and the mother, and they wouldn't kill the kid. That was their justification. Well, at least I'm not killing a kid. And the other partner would say, I'm going to put this kid out of its misery because it just lost both of its parents. And that's how they justified continuing on with the killing when humans just aren't supposed to do it. I mean, it was real ugly stuff, right? Now, what could possibly be happening that is tantamount in any way that's even similar to the lead up to Jews being, like being murdered en masse in World War II? That doesn't even do it justice. You don't even understand. Okay, there were scratch marks inside of the gas chambers where people were being killed en masse. It was ugly. Real ugly. Now, what is it that this guy thinks is equivalent to that? Or even the lead up to it? Let me give you some of my notes. Chapter 5, it's called 12,000 Pastors. Here's what I wrote in my notes. Healthy patriotism wasn't enough, because healthy patriotism is good in this guy's mind. So churches had to virtue signal, notice that word, by hanging Nazi flags outside their parish or whatever. This is much like churches flying BLM flags today. So, Black Lives Matter is effectively a Nazi movement in this guy's mind, is what he's saying. Churches don't realize the forces behind BLM and rainbow flags are smiling because they deceived them. This is real, okay? This guy seems to think that Black Lives Matter and just the LGBT community in general is preparing to, I guess, creating chambers in which they're going to lock the doors and seal it so gas can't get out. And they're going to release gas into the room, killing everybody horrifically, and then throw them into incinerators. Is that what this guy thinks Black Lives Matter is doing? What trans people are doing? Really? Is that really what he believes? Because that's how he framed it in his book. God, man, I really need to write a book about this. I so want to write a book about this, but I feel like I have to get my first book out before starting a new one. The BLM/LGBT communities are like Nazis. That's in my notes here. Nobody dreamt of Hitler doing what he did. And nobody would dream of BLM/the LGBT community doing what they intend to do to us. That's in my notes. Yeah, let me just check a couple. That was chapter 5, okay? Chapter 6 was kind of boring. 7 was kind of boring. 8 was boring. Let's see. Chapter 9 got interesting. The Idol of Evangelism is what that one was called. And let me just, again, that's so frustrating, dude. My game froze up. I hate that. Let me just read some of the notes from Chapter 9, Idol of Evangelism. Being canceled is a point of pride. Nazis canceled people. Being canceled is a sign that BLM and Antifa and communists and socialists and the LGBT community, being canceled by them is a sign that they intend to do to Eric Metaxas what Hitler did to the Jews. That's the way he sees it. Socialistic and communistic ideas are being pushed everywhere, which hurt the poor more than anyone. But those who spread socialistic and communistic ideas boldly claim that those who oppose the ideas hate the poor. Okay, I don't know who he's talking about when he says, like, they, or who he thinks is spreading socialistic or communistic ideas, but let me give you a little secret here, Eric. There are no socialists or communists in government. There are no socialists or communists in any kind of position of authority to any degree in the United States. Now, I assume that the book that he wrote, Letter to the American Church, I assume it's about, like, me, right? Because I'm on the left. I'm in favor of the LGBT community, for example. So I assume it's about me. I am neither socialist nor communist. But apparently I'm spreading those ideas all over the place. Should we keep silent about this stuff? People are looking to the church for answers on these subjects. That's in my notes. We take our eyes off God if we capitulate to cancel culture. That's what he said, no joke. This guy actually said that. Chapter 10 was interesting, too, and 11. Be ye not political was chapter 11. It appeared to me that chapter 11 was basically his attempt to justify away Romans 13:1. You know, Romans 13:1 is that verse in the Bible that basically says, you don't need to get involved in politics. Pay to Caesar what is Caesar's. Pay to God what is God's. Don't be part of this world. Just do your thing and let them do their thing, and you preach the message of God. That's it. Turn the other cheek, live your life, and just preach God's message. That's it. That's what's required of you. You don't need to get involved in politics, bottom line. And what did this dude do for the entirety of chapter 11 of his book, Letter to the American Church? Came up with excuses for why that verse is completely invalid or misinterpreted or whatever. The entire time. I love it how there are 6 verses total in the entire 32,000 verse Bible about being gay. And it wasn't even about being gay either. Those verses were really about prostitution, male prostitution, and pederasty. And this guy zeroed in on those verses, those 3 of the verses specifically, and said being gay is wrong. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just what it is. If you don't like it, then you don't like God. And fascinatingly, he completely ignores the verses that are inconvenient to him otherwise, like Romans 13, the whole chapter that says stay out of politics, finds a way to justify it, finds a way to pretend that's not what the Bible was saying. No, Eric, that is what the Bible was saying. Stay out of politics. This dude is such a joke. Okay, now, Eric Metaxas has been telling us about his book, Letter to the American Church, this whole time, and how I'm basically a Nazi, pretty much. Me, personally, I'm a Nazi. And I intend to do Nazi things to Eric Metaxas, in his mind, because I support the LGBT community. So let's hear what else he has to say, Jordan Peterson. I love how Jordan Peterson isn't pushing back against any of this. He's just accepting it, right?
Things on a number of fronts. The parallels are so marked. Even the parallel of the excuses given by theologians and Christians in the 30s who said, we don't want to speak out against Hitler. We don't want to. These are our reasons. Dramatically similar parallels among.
What parallel specifically? Who do people not want to speak out against? What church has said, we don't want to speak out against blah because it could cause problems for us? Who do churches not want to speak out against exactly? That makes you think that this is like a Nazi situation.
Many evangelicals and others in the American church today for why they are being silent on issues that they ought to be screaming about, issues that you and others have shouted about. The evil of the transgender.
Now he's telling us who's causing these problems, right? Now he's telling us who the Nazis are, finally. So I guess he's saying that churches don't want to speak out against the transgender because then they'll be like, what, impaled by some immortal enemy or something? By a Nazi regime?
The transgender lunacy and on and on and on and on. So I said,
No, don't on and on me. Tell me what you're talking about. Give me the information. You claim that there are Nazis among us right now. You know who the real Nazis are? I'll tell you who the Nazis are. We've got self-avowed Nazis running around right now, today, talking about loving Hitler, thinking he didn't go far enough. Let me find one. Hold on. All right. Well, I mean, this one is okay. Alex Jones gets Kanye West on his show to talk about Hitler and how much he loves him, right? This was back in 2022, I think. When was this? This was in, early December 2022, December 1st.
The most Nazi-like activities I've seen, and the Nazis, in my view, were thugs that shook people down, did a lot of really bad things.
Well, they did good things, too. We're going to stop dissing the Nazis all the time.
Okay.
Why is this guy defending Hitler right now? We're going to stop dissing the Nazis all the time. They did a lot of good things, too. I don't give a shit what the Nazis did that was good. They killed 6 million Jews. Are you kidding me right now? Here's one. Kanye wants to create a system of second-class citizens where Christians control the means of production and supply and everything else, and non-Christians are the laborers. They're the second class, the lower class.
But they don't deserve to be in charge of everything because they don't put Christ in.
Well, how do you legislate that?
They need to work for Christians, Jews.
This is, by the way, an interview with Gavin McInnes, early 2023, not long after that Alex Jones interview.
Jews should work for Christians. I'll hire a Jewish person in a second if I knew they weren't a spy and I could look through their phone and follow them to their house and have a camera all in their living room.
Why are they laughing at that? I don't understand. What was funny about that? I'm trying to understand this. I feel like I don't get the joke. Here, let me pull it. Here, this is another one. This is a good one. Right here. Again, December 1st, 2022.
Seriously, I've really studied a lot of history. Plus, I had family that was there. And so, I don't think Hitler was a good guy. I get the Hugo Boss uniforms, amazing. But just because you're in love with the design, you're a designer. Can we just kind of say you like the uniforms, but that's about it?
There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler. A lot of things. Hey, Neden, what did you?
Yeah, then he goes off on a whole bit. Those are the Nazis, the Republicans. Republicans are self-avowed Nazis. Many of them are. I don't know any self-avowed Nazi Democrats or anybody who's on the left who claims to be a Nazi. I know an awful lot of right-wingers who claim to be Nazis. This guy here on the right, this is Nick Fuentes. If you don't know him, self-avowed Nazi. He has a little group of extremist nutcases called Groypers. He's on 4chan and 8chan and all of the chans. He's a Nazi too, like I said. Let's see. Let me just find a clip from Nick Fuentes. Just a couple of good clips that give you an idea of who this guy is, who Kanye West is hanging out with, who Alex Jones is inviting on his show, giving his platform to, talking to, encouraging interaction with. Let's talk about who the Nazis are, actually. Here you go. Here's one. Yeah, all right, here's Nick Fuentes right here. This is from 2022. In fact, it was just 2 weeks before that interview with Kanye West and Alex Jones.
9 in 10 blacks vote for Democrats. Why do they do that? God only knows. Why do they play the knockout game? Why do they punch white people in the street for no reason?
Why do black people punch white people in the street for no reason? What? What the hell is he talking about?
Why do they rob 5 7-Elevens in 30 minutes? Why do they walk around with their pants around their ankles? I don't know.
What's he talking about? Black people walk around with pants around their ankles and rob 5 7-Elevens in 30 minutes? What?
I don't know. I'm not black, so it's not my experience. It's unexplainable, but this is what they do. Okay, this is how they are. It is what it is. That black vote is locked in, man. It is totally inelastic. It doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what they believe or who they like. I mean, it just doesn't matter. So why would we create these opportunity zones and a platinum plan and just send the military in? Do what must be done. Send the military into these black neighborhoods, make the streets safe. They'll complain about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're never going to vote for us.
By the way, what he's describing right now in the chain of events that played out during World War II, he's describing the Jew hunt. I believe the Jew hunt happened in 1939. The leaders of the country, basically Hitler, instructed police battalions and military and everybody else to find Jews and hunt them down. Just go out there and take them out. Explained how to kill them and everything. He's describing, Nick Fuentes here, he's describing the Jew hunt. Here's Nick Fuentes, another clip of him. Self-avowed Nazi, remember. He is a Nazi. He claims to be a Nazi. He loves Hitler. He thinks he did the right thing. He thinks he didn't go far enough. He wants to see more of what Hitler had to offer or whatever. This is Nick Fuentes.
That's what we call the secret ingredient. America and the world has forgotten about them, but not us. You know, they say about America, they say, diversity is our strength, you know.
That's accurate. Yes, diversity is our strength. That is why the United States is the world leader in so much stuff.
And I look at China and I look at Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia?
This was immediately after Russia invaded Ukraine and decided to... Anyway, just keep listening.
Yes.
They're cheering Russia immediately after they invaded Ukraine. They're cheering them invading Ukraine. And cheering Putin's name.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, but I take a look around the world. I look at Russia. I look at China. You know, China, they're editing their babies to be smarter, strong.
No, that's not happening. I love that he brings this up. I looked into this heavily. There was a guy, a rogue scientist, who was experimenting on children with technology that we have here in the United States, CRISPR, and other things. And when it was found out what he was doing, he was arrested and put in jail for the rest of his life in China for doing that. That is illegal. They're not editing their babies, quote unquote, in China, but okay.
Longer, faster. Russia, they're invading countries. They took out the whole Ukrainian.
Oh, yeah. They took out the whole Ukrainian what exactly? Last I heard, Ukraine was holding them off. But either way, since when is invading a country viewed as like a positive? Since when is that a good thing? When's that considered a good thing?
But I rest easy at night knowing that America has diversity.
He actually should. Diversity is our strength, in all seriousness. That is what makes America strong, really. One more clip I want to show you, or just one or two more here. Marjorie Taylor Greene showing up at that Nazi conference. You know, the conference where Nazis spoke about Nazi things. They wanted to talk about Nazis and Nazi-related activities. That thing? Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke there.
My name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I am the daughter of the King, the one true living God, the Alpha, the Omega, our Father in heaven, and I am a forgiven sinner, washed in the blood of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Like, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds gross. I mean, this is very obviously like Christian extremism, right? So who are the Nazis, Eric Metaxas? Who exactly are the Nazis? Tell me who the Nazis are. Because as far as I can tell, they're telling me that they are the Christian nationalists. They are telling me that you are the Nazi. The Nazis are telling me that. They're yelling, Christ is King.
Praise God. Amen. Christ is King.
Anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene is absolutely psychotic. That's just a story for another day. So tell me again, Eric Metaxas, who are the Nazis again?
Have shouted about the evil of the transgender.
The transgenders. I'm sorry. Yeah. The transgenders are the Nazis. That's my mistake. See, I thought it was the people who actually literally claimed to be Nazis, but no, it's the transgenders. Okay.
Lunacy and on and on and on and on. So I said to myself, I can't believe it, but the parallels are so dramatic to the silence of the church in Germany that I am just burning to speak this, hoping and praying that God in his grace would use it to wake up those who might be awakened. We know that some people will insist on sleepwalking to the abyss. They cannot be reached. But I know that...
All right, so he's taken it upon himself to wake people up to the fact, in his mind at least, that the transgenders are the Nazis. Completely ignoring people who literally claim to be Nazis standing behind him, rooting him on. We're just going to pretend that's not happening.
In Germany in the 30s, there were many good pastors who got this wrong. Many good pastors who were fooled, deceived, who allowed themselves to be deceived until it was too late. Many of them woke up and then it was too late to do anything. So I wrote this book hoping to reach those specifically who call themselves Christians, who dare to call themselves Christians, with the idea that they would say, yes, I have been complicit in my silence, in my inaction. These excuses are not biblically based. I must speak out.
So he's saying he was trying to radicalize people. That's what he's describing here. He's trying to get people whipped into a blood frenzy and willing to do whatever it takes to turn them into soldiers for the far-right extremists. It's not even like, he's not even being honest about the situation to any degree. He's just like making things up. This is straight up disgusting, dude. Straight up wrong. He's literally using the deaths of 6 million people against him. That is wrong.
There's a lot there. So,
oh, tell me, but yeah, there is a lot there.
Let me go through some of the questions that we might address. I'd like to
please
know what you mean by God's hand, say, rather than your hand in your writing, and so that people can understand exactly what you mean by that and how that appears to you and how you distinguish your voice, let's say, from the spirit of inspiration.
Right. So Eric Metaxas claimed that God basically pushed him to write this book, the letter to the American church, to radicalize people and turn them into right-wing extremists who hate the poor and who hate the downtrodden and all the people that Jesus loved. He's trying to convince them to hate those people in this book. So anyway, I guess his question, Jordan Peterson's question is, how can you tell that it's God that's giving you this information and not just yourself who's getting this information, I guess?
Then I'd like to know what events of the last 3 years that you think are particularly problematic, because there's no Hitler staring us in the face at the moment, so that's the obvious historical parallel. There's systems of warring ideas, and you're on the Christian side of that war, let's say. You said
he's not on the Christian side. In my opinion, Christian nationalism is not Christianity. Now, it claims Christianity, and if people claim Christianity, they're Christian. That's just what it is. That's the way that I see it. It doesn't matter. You can be Heaven's Gate. You can be Jehovah's Witness. You can be Mormon. You can be whatever. It does not matter to me. If you claim to be Christian, then you're a Christian, as far as I'm concerned. But the Christian nationalist movement, of which Eric Metaxas is a part, in my opinion, is cynically using Christianity as a method, as a vehicle to get to where they want to be. Does he even believe in Christianity? Probably, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. He doesn't have to believe in Christianity for his plan to work, to be able to use it as a vehicle to get to the top. It's irrelevant if he believes in it or not.
They dare to call themselves Christian, which is an interesting phrase. So let's start with your description of some of the books that you've written is that they were inspired, and my sense is that you can separate out an attempt to write a book for instrumental reasons from an attempt to write a book to put forth what you believe to be true, right? Now,
what the hell does that mean? I'm sorry, dude. Like, when Jordan Peterson talks, my mind just shuts off. Not only is this guy not entertaining to listen to, but he uses argument by gibberish, that logical fallacy where you just use big words that mean absolutely nothing to anybody, and when put next to each other, I suppose you can kind of cobble together some meaning. But it's so mentally tiring to figure out what the hell he's trying to communicate. Like, just say it in English, man, please. All right, let's step back and listen again.
And my sense is that you can separate out an attempt to write a book for instrumental reasons.
For instrumental reasons. You can separate out your reason to write a book for instrumental reasons? I don't know what that means.
From an attempt to write a book to put forth what you believe to be true, right?
And are those supposed to be like antonyms or whatever? Like, what does he mean by that? I don't understand. Is he just like making words up right now?
Now, they're mingled a little bit because you sort of have to select your audience, although when I wrote my first book,
everything is by definition mingled. There's no getting around that unless a demon is speaking and you're doing automatic ghostwriting or something like that. In other words, we are created in God's image, and inevitably, you can say this about the New Testament itself, about the New and Old Testaments. I mean, they're inspired, but Paul does not erase his personality to speak for God.
Okay, so the first half of what he just said was completely meaningless. I have no idea what he was trying to communicate. The second half of what he said, I think he was trying to say you can't separate your personality from your writing. Well, it seems to me like if God is inspiring you to write something, if you just like sit down and close your eyes and let God take over, it seems to me that you can separate your personality from your writing. Can't you?
Created Paul with his personality so that God could use the medium of the human being that is Paul to say what God has to say. So it's different from, there are people I know who will hear the voice of God. They will hear God speak a sentence or speak a scripture or something. I'm not talking about that. That happens, but that didn't happen to me. For me.
So he's saying God didn't inspire him to write this book then, right? Is that what I'm picking up? At the beginning, he claimed that God inspired him to write this book, and now he's telling us that he did not. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being honest. Too bad most of the people listening to this aren't going to pick up on it. They're just going to pretend that he was inspired to write the book. This is just a joke, man. Honest question, but if a member of LGBTQ was choking to death, would the Jehovah's Witnesses try to help them? Yes. The answer is yes. Because they believe that anybody can be saved. Again, this is something that I talk about in the 100 questions that I have for Jehovah's Witnesses. I try to draw a distinction. I try to draw a line and draw out and explain how Jehovah's Witnesses feel about non-Jehovah's Witnesses, about apostates, and about gay people. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses have a tendency to say, we don't hate gay people. We love gay people. We just want gay people to, start living in line with God's expectations. And, if they're gay and they are Jehovah's Witness, they just can't be married. And not being able to be married means you can't sleep with anybody, so that's just your lot in life. I completely reject the framing. In my book, 100 Questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, let me just read a few questions for you to really clarify Jehovah's Witnesses' real view of X or non-Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, I'm going to pull it up on screen so you can see. This is the unedited version. It hasn't been line edited. It hasn't been cleaned up or anything like that. So please forgive spelling errors, grammatical errors, so on and so forth. But this is the 100 questions. Let me get down to the important ones. Here's question number 97. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses hate gay people? Why do they hate gay people? Now, Jehovah's Witnesses would completely disagree with that characterization, but let me tell you why that's an accurate characterization. They hate gay people. Jehovah's Witnesses would deny this charge. We don't hate gay people, they'd say. We love everybody. We just want them to meet God's moral expectations. We'll talk about God's moral expectations in a moment, but I claim that Jehovah's Witnesses do hate gay people. Take a look at this quote from a 1995 Awake. Quote, "A youth who desires to please God must therefore conform to his moral standards and shun immoral behavior, though doing so may be agonizingly difficult. True, some individuals may very well be prone to homosexuality, just as some individuals are, according to the Bible, prone to wrath. But the Bible still condemns displays of unrighteous anger. Similarly, a Christian cannot excuse immoral behavior by saying he was born this way. Child molesters invoke the same pathetic excuse when they say their cravings for children is innate. But anyone can deny their sexual appetite. But can anyone deny their sexual appetite is perverted? So is the desire for someone of the same sex. I.e., Jehovah's Witnesses view gay people the same way they view pedophiles. Jehovah's Witnesses view gay people the same way they view child molesters. They view them as morally depraved, dangerous to everybody around them, and believe that their sexual appetite is perverted. Gay people wouldn't exist in a government set up and controlled by Jehovah's Witnesses. If that's not hate, then I don't know what is. They can claim they don't hate them all they want, but it's a hard conclusion to avoid. Here's question number 98. Why isn't it a disfellowshipping offense for a parent to abandon their children? This is part of the hating homosexuals line of thought, so follow through with me. By the way, owenmorgan.com/book. If you want to check, it's in the description. It's being line edited right now. I'll be mailing out copies pretty soon. So why isn't it a disfellowshipping offense for a parent to abandon their children? Jehovah's Witnesses claim that they don't mandate shunning incorrectly. But okay, let's say that they don't mandate shunning. Why isn't it a disfellowshipping offense to abandon your children the way that I was? The Catholic Church controlled entire towns centuries ago. If a member of the town broke a Catholic rule, they wouldn't be able to rent a room anymore. They couldn't buy food or hang out with friends. The hope was that they would wander into the woods and die. Excommunication or disfellowshipping is effectively marking a person as dead in the eyes of the shunners. This is the punishment for being gay. That's the punishment for being critical of the religion, or having a girlfriend, or smoking a cigarette. It's the punishment for a nearly endless list of supposed sins, quote unquote. When I was disfellowshipped in 11th grade, I was kicked out of my home by my mother. I had to drop out of high school. Jehovah's Witnesses seem to think my mother made the right decision. Not only was she not punished, but status and respect within the congregation seemed to rise for her when she kicked me out in 11th grade. Why is abandoning a child not viewed negatively? Why isn't it a disfellowshipping offense in its own right? Forget Jehovah's Witnesses' false claims that they don't shun. Why don't they ban shunning? If they're so desperate to convince the outside world that this isn't part of their core doctrine, why not guarantee that it doesn't happen by creating a mandate? Shunning, by the way, is mandated if a family member is gay. Number 99. Here's question 99. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses have wrath in their heart rather than love? The last conversation I ever had with my mother ended with her telling me that I was repulsive to her because I'm critical of the Watchtower Society. After being kicked out of my house in 11th grade, I was taken in by a Methodist woman named Sue. She was the great-grandmother of my daughter. Sue knew I believed in Jehovah's Witnesses doctrine, but she loved me anyway. When I realized that Jehovah's Witnesses were wrong and walked away from the whole thing, Sue still loved me. When I became addicted to heroin to cope with the loss of everything I ever knew, Sue let me live with her. When I was too destitute to buy Christmas presents for my own family, Sue bought presents for them addressed from me. Sue has never called me repulsive. No matter how low I got, Sue was still with me through it. Even after divorcing her granddaughter, she allowed me to live with her and loved me as if I were her own son. I was not her responsibility, and she took me in anyway. She was the perfect embodiment of the qualities Jesus expected from his followers. She took care of the poor and loved everybody, no matter what. Sue was my real mother for all intents and purposes. Sue died on September 21st, 2022. She had nothing but love in her heart. Every Jehovah's Witness I have ever known has disowned me and looks at me with disgust. They even call me repulsive, quote unquote. They hate me. They persecute me. They do not follow Jesus' example, as Sue did. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses have hate and wrath in their hearts instead of love, as Jesus commanded? Why do they pretend to love everybody while being selective about the love that they show? Why do they believe God will save them when they are the embodiment of the goats described in Jesus' sheep and goats parable at Matthew 25:31-46? Jehovah's Witnesses hate non-Jehovah's Witnesses. They hate gay people. I am absolutely tired of hearing the claim that Jehovah's Witnesses don't hate anybody for anything. They're just nice people. They love everybody. They just want people to be saved, so on and so forth. I reject that. They hate some people. And you know what? If they don't hate those people, I don't know what hate is. Sue loved everybody. Jehovah's Witnesses hate people. If they think that they're getting into heaven or paradise or getting everlasting life or whatever, they are sorely mistaken. Anyway, to answer the question more directly with that context in mind, would Jehovah's Witnesses save a gay person if they were choking on something? The answer is yes, because the hope is that they'd be able to get them to, make their way into the new system. They could get them saved. They could convince them to be part of the religion before it's too late. They don't want anybody to die. They want everybody to make it through. But they have pure, unadulterated hate for anybody who does not fit into their narrow view of what somebody should be or how somebody should live. Why did they call it the Watchtower? Always reminded me of the POW MIA flag, a silhouette of a prisoner being guarded by Watchtower nightmare fuel. Thank you so much for the question, Anthony R. The answer is pretty interesting, actually. I wrote about this in the book, too. The origins of the name Watchtower. The Watchtower Society was created roughly in 1879. That's when the Watchtower Society started publishing information, at the very least, 1879. And they've had different names over the years. Oh my God. I wrote about it, and I have the chapter here, but I'm going to have to find it. I'll find it later. Anyway, they've had different names, like the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, or just the Watchtower Society of Pennsylvania, or whatever. But colloquially, they've been known as the Watchtower. And in the beginning, they were known as Zion's Watchtower. The idea is the Watchtower Society prints the Watchtower magazine, which acts as a tower through which leaders of the organization can watch and take care of matters, or members can watch through this tower to make sure that they're living up to God's guidelines or whatever other thing. I think that's the idea behind it. Watchtower used to have a cross on the front all the way up until I think like 1935. Again, I wrote all about it in my book if you guys want to read it. OwenMorgan.com/book. It's in the description. Take a look if you're curious.